Hello, welcome to my Smack Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Machoda. Happy Monday to you. The season is over. Finally, after one of the craziest final sequences of a Mets season ever, the 2024 Major League Baseball regular season is over. The New York Mets finish with an 89-73 record and finally clinch a postseason berth for the first time since 2022, and are going to the wild card game, and they will play once again the Milwaukee Brewers. This is the Mets. Oh gosh. Okay. So this was. I've been sitting here kind of just like ruminating and digesting everything that had happened over the course of this afternoon. And I'm not going to talk about Game 2, because Game 2 was whatever. The Mets weren't even trying. They were just like, okay, we're mentally booking their plane tickets, their plane reservations off to Milwaukee. I know the team takes care of that, but we're not going to talk about Game 2 because that was just a wash. That was like, okay, here you go, Atlanta. We're going to give you Game 2. Congratulations. We hope you would have done the same thing for us. Were the circumstances turned around? I like to hope so. I don't really put it past Atlanta not to just be like, all right, we're just going to win Game 2 also. But none of that happened. Instead, we got an epic Game 1, perhaps the most epic first game of a doubleheader in Mets history. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that may, in fact, have been the greatest opening game of a doubleheader ever, that's ever played. This was just an back and forth game that was, for 7 innings, just incredibly boring, and then all hell broke loose in the 8th inning, and then the 9th inning, and it felt like it wouldn't stop. It felt like this was going to go in the extra inning somehow, and then we were going to be playing until like the 15th inning, until finally one of the two teams just like gave up and was saying they started to like throw like position players out there. I thought it was going to be an absolute disaster, and it nearly was. I texted my brother after the game and said, I'm not sure which bullpen performed worse down the stretch, and he was like, I think Atlanta did. I think theirs was the worst, just barely, and it was. Truly one of the weirder games I've ever seen ever. But so let's talk about it. First off, Spencer Schwellenberg, if I'm saying that correctly, God help me. Honestly, just go. Like I would curse, but I don't want to like get into any kind of trouble. So I'm gonna say what I'll say, which is Schwellenbach. I keep calling him Schwellenberger for some reason. It's Schwellenbach, Spencer Schwellenbach. Go F yourself. I cannot stand him. He's so annoying. I don't know, like it is just Atlanta's way to just come up with some guy who would just show up and like, oh yeah, he's a rookie, but he's also really good, and he used to be a shortstop, so he could feel his position really well also. And I'm like, this is just their way. Like, it's just, they're just going to develop another like good pitcher who's just going to torment the Mets for the next like 10 years, and they're going to pay him like peanuts because somehow Atlanta gets away with doing that all the time, and like God knows how. And that's just the way it'll be. And then like, I don't know, oh boy. So Schwellenbach absolutely made the Mets his starts with a B and ends with an H, and I was like, okay, well, this is the exact same thing happening all over again, and then it wasn't. Then things started turning around. So it all comes to a head during this insane 8th inning, which I watching it, I couldn't really describe what was happening other than like I was like trying to hold myself from somehow inadvertently jinxing them during that game, and like that entire inning, I'm just like, oh my God, like this is like insane. I can't believe this is actually happening. They've come back. And not only come back, but they've taken a 3-run lead. This is insane. I couldn't believe it. So in the 8th inning, when all hell breaks loose, we start off with Tyrone Taylor doubling to left field, left center. And then Francisco Alvarez coming through, RBI double. Alvarez, this is just like this was like the final cherry on his September, where he has been fantastic for the most part. I mean, like there's been certainly times where he's looked really bad, but he has been just the dose of like power and coming up in clutch situations that they've really needed, particularly with the struggles of Vientos and Alonso. They've needed a third power hitter to show up and play and be that kind of middle of the order formidable presence. And he stepped up. He's been that guy, and so he comes up with an RBI double. Mets are friendly on the board. It's 3-1. And I'm thinking now at this point, I'm like, okay, like so they're probably going to score one run. That's it. Like they're not going to be able to get an Alvarez. But then suddenly, Starling Marte singles left, and we got 2 men on, and then Francisco Lindor. We'll talk about Lindor in a second. Begins his most legendary performance with an RBI single to center, and that scores Alvarez. All of a sudden, it's 3-2, and then Jose Iglesias is up, and Iglesias, of course, gets another single. It's a single to right, and that scores Marte, and all of a sudden we got a tie game. Vientos flies out, sac fly, Lindor scores, and we're up 4-3. And who should come up the bat but Brandon Nimmo, and Brandon Nimmo, ka-ching, puts the Mets up 6-3 with a 2-run home run. And Nimmo has had an interesting season. I can't really say that he's been very good this year because he's had such like large absences of like where I'm not sure what he's doing. But he's come through in situations where like if they've needed like a like moment to kind of like put it away, he comes in and he does it. Like he's come in a number of situations in the last few weeks where, like, okay, like put a pin in this one right now, like get that big shot, like finish it off, and he connects with a 2-run home run, a home run that would be extremely pivotal because the Mets would not score after that. Alonso would strike out, Martinez would walk, and then the Mets batted around because Tyron Taylor came up the bat again and then flied out, and that was it. And leave a runner straight on first, and then they bring in Phil Maton, and Maton's been excellent for the Mets for the most part. I think he's been really good. He was a great addition for the Mets mid-season. They got him for very little, and he's been a really consequential addition and a guy that I think they're going to lean on. For the most part, though, Maton was not good. He hits the first batter, gets the fly out. Travis d'Arnaud comes at the bat. He gets a single. Screw Travis d'Arnaud, by the way. I cannot stand Travis d'Arnaud either. Wish he would drop dead. And then gets a ground out. Got 2 men on. Sorry. So after the d'Arnaud single, Mendoza decides at this point to pull Maton, who doesn't look like has great stuff, and bring in Edwin Diaz. And unfortunately, Edwin Diaz goes into like 2019. Let me see how I can possibly blow a 3-run lead here in the bottom of the 8th. And you know what? I struggle to criticize whenever Diaz is brought into like the 8th inning. I'm like, it's not his fault that you're like the setup man couldn't get the job done. Like he has to come in and like pitch and get extra outs that he wasn't really expecting to pitch, I assume. So it's hard to like criticize him, but I will criticize him for this part, which is after the ground out, he gives up a single that's an RBI single because he doesn't think to cover first base, and I'm watching the instant replay, and I'm like, what is he doing? Also, they set up this insane, like, epic, like, oh yeah, like, we're gonna have Jerry Kelenic up with the bat against Edwin Diaz, and this, like poetic, like, this guy was traded for this guy, and I'm like, is there a reason you brought up Jerry Kelenic right now to face Edwin Diaz? Like, I was like, just to, like, screw with him? Like, is that the reason why? It was absolutely insane. It's like, so, Kelenic, sharp grounder to right field, just over the first base, and stays fair. Pete Alonso makes a nifty sliding stop and looks up to like throw the ball first base, and Edwin Diaz is nowhere to be found. Edwin Diaz was not covering first base because Edwin Diaz is Survey says, stupid. There are times I'm like, this guy has nothing but rocks banging around in his head. He is at times just incredibly stupid. And for a guy who's been in the league for like this long, like it's not like an experience thing. He's just stupid sometimes. I swear to God, he is just like really dumb. And this was the time where he just like blanked, and he was just like, "Oh right, I should be covering first base right now." He's like waiting on the pitcher's mound for God only knows how long. I was like counting it out. It was like 4 seconds. Like he was just like standing there watching the play happen. And I don't know if he thought like immediately like, oh, that's going to be a foul ball, or oh, like that looks like it's going to be a double. Maybe he didn't think Alonso made the play. I don't know what he was doing, but like he didn't even think to like, oh, maybe I should be running to first base just in case somehow he makes the play. It was absolutely bizarre, and I for the life of me could not understand why any of that happened, other than to say that Edwin Diaz is a complete idiot. But that sets up not only so we have Kelenic on first base, so the Braves get back a run. It's now 6-4, and then the Trouble Twins, Michael Harris and Ozzie Albies show up, and then Michael Harris walks, of course, because Michael Harris always walks in situations where he can kind of screw over the Mets. And then Ozzie Albies, not like he hadn't done enough damage in this game already, hits a 2-run double. A 3-run double, clears the bases, and now it's 7-6 Atlanta. I was very happy. I had stepped away. Thank God. So in this case, I had walked out of my apartment because I had to go to an appointment to get my car inspected, and I was like, okay. I thought I timed this all out pretty well, where I was like, okay, the appointment's at 4, the game starts at 1:10. The game will probably go 2.5 hours, but so by the time it's done, I can ready to leave. And then, of course, things went crazy, and so I left in the middle of the Diaz meltdown. I checked the score when I get to Mavis, and the Mets are down 7-6. It's the top of the ninth, and I'm like, oh my God, like I can't believe they're gonna lose this game because Edwin Diaz is an idiot and he can't get anybody out. And then, like a bolt from beyond, Francisco Lindor. Why do we chant MVP? Let me tell you why. Because this guy, he's not gonna win MVP. I swear to God, if I could make it happen, I would make it happen. But this poor guy, like, it's just like. Of course, he shows up in the top of the ninth, facing Pierce Johnson of the Atlanta Braves for some reason. I don't know why Pierce Johnson was in that game right then, but Pierce Johnson, not a bad reliever, but not really their best reliever. I was a little surprised for the direction that they went in that. But we should also shout out Starling Marte also getting another single and setting up that play, setting up Lindor at the plate. And Lindor shows up, pops a 2-run home run. And Mets are back up 8-7, and at that point you're like looking for like, okay, is there a guy up in the bullpen right now? And shockingly, no one's up in the bullpen. And we go back out there, and I'm watching this like all play out. So I come out of like Mavis, and then I'm looking at my phone, and I'm checking the score, and I'm like, oh my God, the Mets went ahead. Like I was like, oh my God, I missed the 2-run home run, unfortunately. Like, so I was like, oh my God. Like I checked the replay shortly after on Twitter. I'm like, okay, they got the 2-run home run, great, awesome. And then I'm like, oh my God, they're bringing Edwin Diaz back out, and thankfully I'm out. I run across the street to Dunkin' Donuts, connect to the Wi-Fi. I bring up the Hulu app on my phone, and connect to the SNY broadcast, and I start watching it. And I was glad to watch this game, although I was like freaking out in the middle of a Dunkin' Donuts. That thankfully was empty, but I was just like, oh my God, this is insane. They brought it back out there. For what reason? God only knows. As it turns out, Edwin Diaz was like, I'm going to finish this game no matter what. Mendoza, put me back out there. I don't care what you say. And I think at that point probably like the team was like debating like just like hitting him with a bat over the head, just like, no, don't go back out there, man. We gave you a 3-run lead and you couldn't fucking hold it. Sorry for cursing. And I watched this all play out. So he gets medals, which I was concerned about. But of course, Eli White gets on base right after that, and then he's still second. Now we got a guy on scoring position, and it comes down. He's able to get the strikeout. Strikes out Ramon Laureano. At this point, he's got like 38 pitches. I don't know how many pitches he threw at that point. He finished with 40 pitches over the course of this inning and 2/3 performance, and it sets up Travis d'Arnaud at the plate. And Travis d'Arnaud, if you've been paying attention, has come up with, unfortunately, some pretty epic late game shots as of late. And I'm watching it, I'm like, oh my god, it's going to come down to a Travis d'Arnaud walk-off home run, isn't it? Like, he's going to walk it off for Atlanta. This is how it's going to play out. I know it is. And amazingly enough, Diaz is able to get d'Arnaud out. d'Arnaud grounds out to short. Lindor makes the toss over the first. Mets are in the postseason. And watching it where I'm like, this is like an up and down roller coaster type game, I was kind of just like brought to myself. I was like, okay, so this was like, this was like the Mets like challenged themselves, like, oh, okay, how can we make a game that's completely symbolizes our entire season all in one game, and we're gonna make this all work out in a way where we're not gonna play well for the beginning part of the game, and then we're gonna come back late, and then all of a sudden win late, despite her bullpen not pitching well. And it's with like a cast of characters that you're like, the guys who they needed to come through, who have been the guys who've been winning for them consistently, all showed up in this game. And it was Lindor, obviously, but it was also Tyler McGill, who pitched a pretty solid 5 and something thirds innings, and 5 and 2/3 innings, and struck out 8. Like, it was pretty solid for them for the most part, and leaving him in, and then so the decision to kind of like put their season on the line right here, they go to Tyler McGill, and McGill, who's has been pretty successful in the second half of the season, comes through, and he gave them, there was no way he was going to win that game, but but I was impressed with what I saw from McGill. He was not bad, and got the job done for them for the most part. And then it's Lindor comes through. It's also Starling Marte who came back from oblivion and was playing well for them. And he's come through with some pretty good base hits. He's been looking pretty healthy for the most part in the second half of the season, and that's been enjoyable for me because I'm a big Marte fan. And Francisco Alvarez coming through with big hits, and then Tyrone Taylor is going the fourth man in the south field, who just keeps coming through in like situations where you wouldn't necessarily expect him to come through. He gets a hit, and it just keeps playing it out. And then like Brandon Nimmo, Brandon Nimmo's been there the entire year, and you would sometimes forget about Brandon Nimmo because Brandon Nimmo often is just kind of forgettable in terms of his performance, but it just kind of works out for them, and it just kind of worked all out for them in this case where. It once again all came down to Francisco Lindor, but this was a pretty special game, and like I said, this was just like emblematic of the entire Mets season. This was just them defying expectations and having this somehow incredible ability to just keep coming back over and over and over again. And without Lindor, it probably would not be the case. This is why we've been saying for months now that Lindor has a legitimate case for MVP, even though he won't win it and won't come close to winning it, but he should finish a very good second. But solid runner-up, MVP season for Lindor. But this was the season that no one expected to be the season that it would be. I mean, like, it was a season that everybody wrote them off. They were dead in the water in May and going into June, and they just found a way to win. And you can credit a lot of different people. You should credit Francisco Lindor. You should credit David Stearns. Credit Carlos Mendoza. Credit the Mets starting pitching staff for figuring it all out. Credit Jeremy Hefner. Credit Eric Chavez. Credit should go around to everybody, including Steve Cohen, who's writing the checks for all of this and making sure that we all are having good, positive fan experiences. And it's been a bummer not being able to experience it in front of a home crowd. Having all the final 6 games playing out on the road, it's just been tough to see, and even tougher still that they're going to be on the road again for the wild card round. So we should probably talk about now that the Mets are going to now face the Milwaukee Brewers, like I said before. A reunion of sorts, and after the Mets put a beating on them in the 3rd game, I'm hoping they can continue that momentum. But their postseason starts tomorrow for them. There is no rest. They have to fly back to Milwaukee and show up tomorrow and try and win a game. And so it'll be Luis Severino on the mound. I don't think they've announced who the Brewers pitcher is going to be in Game 1, but Severino will get the Game 1 start. And this is the guy that they have leaned on as their de facto ace all season, even though he has not had the numbers that Sean Manaea and like David Peterson have had. He has been the guy that they have leaned on in situations where they really need a good pitching performance. Severino's come through. And it should be said that I think everybody has a lot of confidence in him. I think they like what they've seen. He has, despite the fact that he's having a season where he's been healthy, and we haven't seen that from Severino in a very long time. It doesn't look like he is hurting in any kind of way. He's looked really good in terms of his stamina for the entire season, pitching a full season after what's been a series of injury-plagued seasons where he hasn't been pitching a full year in a while. It's been nice to see him, and he's going to be coming into a tough situation in Game 1. Milwaukee is a good team, obviously. They are one of the best teams in the National League, and one of the best teams in the Major League Baseball. And I think in general, they've been a surprise themselves for the most part. People were not expecting that team to be as good as they were, but as it turned out, Milwaukee, quite the team, and it's going to be a very interesting few games in Milwaukee. So they will play tomorrow. Like I said, Severino. I would assume Sean Manaea is pitching Game 2, and then should it come down to a Game 3, I would assume David Peterson would go for Game 3. And this is the way it's going to play out. And I don't know yet if the Mets have it in them to win this series. Just to get here has been quite the struggle, and one thing that I like is that when you have a team that has to struggle to get to it, it makes everything that much more sweeter when you actually win. So it's one thing to coast and have 105 wins and be the toast of the National League and have all the success, but it's another thing when you have to scrap and claw and get your way into the postseason, and it comes down to literally a doubleheader after the entire season has ended, and you have to play a doubleheader because Major League Baseball screwed the teams over repeatedly. But this is how it ends. So this is how it all will. It's all going to play out for the Mets, and I'm hoping the season keeps going. I just want to be with this team a little bit longer because it's been a fabulous, fun time. I cannot recall having this much fun watching a Mets team, even when they're giving me all kinds of agita like they did today. And I said to my brother, I hated that game. I hated it as much as I loved it. Honestly, I did not. It was not enjoyable. It was just like a series of clenched, oh my god, and yes, and then oh no, it just kept going like that over and over again for about like 20 minutes, and maybe closer to like a half hour, honestly. And I'm glad I missed part of it, and got to catch more of the highlights really for that part. But it was one of the most bananas games I've ever seen in my life, and watching it all play out, and now that we're actually in the postseason, I'm still stunned. I've like I said, I've been just kind of sitting and digesting it all and looking at the season and being like, wow, it's we're here again, and we got here by defying a lot of expectations and defying the odds. Really, I think people expected the Diamondbacks, and I think I put that out also. That I didn't think the Mets were going to make the postseason. I thought they were going to finish with 87 wins, and Braves and Diamondbacks were gonna just edge us out by a game, and I honestly was not very far off. I was off by about a game, but I didn't really count on Arizona just kind of like blowing it so bad as they did down the stretch, and they did. They went 13-13 in September, and that screwed them over. The Mets went 18-9, 17-9 over September. That is the difference maker right there. That is why they couldn't outlast us, and how it's ended up in a situation where their postseason was in our control, and we could say we're just going to skip game 2. Sorry, Arizona. So it sets up a very interesting postseason schedule. I've been looking at the bracket. It's if the Mets are able to vanquish the Brewers, it sets up another series against Philadelphia, who we've seen quite a bit over the last month, and these two teams are very familiar with each other, and I think a lot of people are expecting Philadelphia to be representing the National League this year in the postseason. In the World Series. The Mets are going to do their best to try and see if they can keep their season going a little bit longer. And if there's one thing I know about this team, it is they do not know when to die. They just keep rising back up. They are literally zombies, just rising from the grave over and over again. And I thought the season was dead going into the 8th inning of today's game 1 game, and I didn't think that they were able to summon the offense that was gone, and they did. They summoned it all. They did everything they needed to do, and they did it all well. And I didn't think I would still be surprised by this team, but they did. They surprised me in a way that I just wasn't expecting. I expected them to roll over and die, and they just keep coming back over and over and over again and keep defying expectations. And we'll see if they can defy expectations for 1 or 2 series more, and maybe they can even shock us again and get us all the way back into a World Series once more. Stranger things have happened. Let's just keep on hoping for one more crazy moment in this crazy season.
Thank you for listening to the Mike Spence podcast. Please be sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Finally, please also follow the podcast Twitter, which is Mike Spence Pod, all one word. Appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Let's go, Mets.